Very first thing that I'd like to say is that this is the first time I've spoken in public for a very, very long time. It's so good to see so many people kind of back into an in-person meetup. And so please, bear with me as I get used to speaking to actual people rather than down the lens of a camera. But also, it's really good to be getting my training wheels back out at Leeds Digital Festival. And so this is the third time that I've had the opportunity to speak at Leeds Digital Festival. The first time was with the Leeds Testing Atelier when I was actually part of Lloyds Banking Group. And the second time was when I was with Brian in Lloyds Banking Group. And this is the third time, and my first time is speaking at Leeds Digital Festival as part of FINOS with Scott Logic, who are actually a FINOS member. And we actually help partner with Scott Logic, who are the organisers. And I'd like to say thank you to the Scott Logic team for actually creating this meetup and inviting everybody here. I'd like to thank you as well for being here, and everybody who's down the lens of a camera as well. I'd like to say thank you for being here as well. And so before I move on and take you through who FINOS are, I'd like everyone just to give the organisers a clap for us. Right, so Suki, I'd like to let you know that actually Lloyds Banking Group is part of a larger community of financial institutions, consultancies and technology companies who are actually partaking in open source, both through software development, standard development, and also special interest groups, which is the coming together of like-minded people in order to share ideas and push the industry forward. The barriers to entry, I really love your proposals and your proposition and your thinking. It's absolutely brilliant because we've got to keep our banks safe. But the barrier to entry within financial services is a lot lower. Coming out to a meetup like this and sharing the slides that you did is absolutely amazing. And that's what we do at FINOS. So we invite everybody from within finance who are related to finance in whatever way to come to events, come onto our calls, listen in, and contribute if you would like to through code and kind of, steering the industry. And you'll be able to join all of the names that you actually see on the board. So these are our active members, both through platinum members, such as large capital markets banks, but also in there you'll notice GitHub are also part of the platinum members, all the way through to consultancies and other tech firms and other engineering firms like Scott Logic, who absolutely pushed a barrier of what open source is doing within finance. And I'd like to thank the Scott Logic team for everything that you're doing. Down in the right-hand side, you'll notice that we have associate members, which are actually very similar to FINOS. And so FINOS is a non-profit foundation that's part of the larger Linux Foundation. And in the Source Commons, which is all about the internal collaboration within banks and other industries across the horizontal of open source, are also members as well. And so within FINOS, we're not just about the wider open source, sharing and collaboration of software and standards and, ideas and interests, but we're also taking on the how do we work together on the inside of corporations, what those patterns, practices, and also standards and maybe software we need to work as engineers within engineering teams from small firms to big corporate organizations. Throughout 2021, we've had a lot of projects that have actually been contributed into FINOS. I mean, across our lifetime, we've started as kind of like a fledgling idea of open source existing within finance, and we've been growing year on year. But throughout the pandemic year of 2021, you'll notice on the right-hand side, we've had Timebase, which is actually a time series database that you can clone, install and run locally within your organization, or maybe even as a developer on your local host. So if you need a time series database, Timebase is part of FINOS and you can use it under an Apache 2 license. Going through the list, we have modeling projects that look at financial services and the way that financial service objects, like in data repositories or in APIs, are constructed. And we come together as a foundation under a project called Legend, which was contributed by Goldman Sachs, to say in the industry, how do we actually describe what a payment actually looks like? What are the attributes of a payment, and how do we pass that data across, to other banks? Or how do we actually architect that within our systems so there's consistency across the industry? As you can imagine, within lots of different banks across the world, so I'm not going to say the industry, but across the globe, a payment can be represented in lots of different ways. So we have projects within the foundation that take all of these financial objects and construct them in a way that the industry agrees to. So there's a consistent model, and that's, what the definition of a model is, and everybody takes that forward. Fast forward through all of these projects, we've got the inner source special interest group where banks such as Capital One, Royal Bank of Canada, Morgan Stanley, Scott Logic are actually part of inner source special interest group, come together to say, how do engineers actually collaborate on the inside of a bank or an organization? What does that maturity model look like? How do we actually measure ourselves against that? And then where do we need to go on from that? Open source readiness is all about governance. It's all about legal and compliance and, the barriers that we need to break down in order to be able to contribute into open source. That's a great place. That would be a great place for the Lloyds team to get involved and learn about. Then I'm not going to go through them all because I've only got 5 minutes. DevOps mutualization is about DevOps. Financial objects is more about financial modeling. And Catch It, which is absolutely brilliant, is a way for us to contribute into open source. But it's actually a library of different rules about catching secrets and passwords and keys and things that you don't want to slip out of your internal repos into the outside world. Goldman Sachs also contributed that, to put onto your route to live. So right at the beginning of your route to live, or even whilst you're developing, you can see that somebody's about to contribute kind of like a password or a key or a credential that you don't want anyone to see. Catch It catches it. Funny enough, it's all in the name. You can find out where to find Finos projects by looking at our landscape at landscape.finos.org. That is a high-level view of everything that we have within Finos. You can kind of click on all of the various different icons across all of our categories, take a look at the projects, look into the repos, look at the microsites, look into the docs, look at who is contributing into those projects, and get a real good idea as an engineer looking into code, because we are on GitHub. We're not kind of like all about talk like I am, but we are about contributing code into repos through CLAs and through pull requests and through commits, through raising issues. But ultimately, next week in London, we're kicking off our very first in-person conference since COVID. So last year it was all virtual over Zoom. This year we're actually bringing people back into London, just outside Aldgate, in between Aldgate and Liverpool Street. It's called the Open Source Strategy Forum, which is OSSF. The first day, which is the 4th of October, is where all of the Finos members, because we're an open source foundation of members, get together to talk through all of the projects, how they're going forward. Colin's actually going to be speaking about an innovation idea and concept that he's pushing through with our KDB project. So it's all about innovation, open source contribution in finance, creating roadmaps from various different projects. That's day one. Day two is an open conference where we have keynote speakers from across the regulators. So Nick Cook from AIR is coming in. He used to be part of the FCA. We have a keynote from somebody from Boston Consulting Group talking about cloud and DevOps. We also have Gabrielle Columbro, who is the Executive Director of Finos, kicking off the conference. And speaking to the Finos team, they've given us a 20% discount code for tonight. So if you want to take a snapshot on your phones of this slide, it'll be great to see people there. So if you're thinking about getting involved in open source in finance, if anybody from the Lloyds team wants to come along, because it's just up the road from where you are, it'll be really great for you guys to come along. We'll absolutely welcome you. We're a very welcoming foundation, I hope, Colin. And that's it. That's my lightning talk. And thank you very much for helping me break my own training wheels. And come and find me afterwards. Thank you so much, Claire, for everything that you're doing, and Paul and Colin and the Scott Logic team. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. It's been really great mingling with everybody. Thank you.